Hey everybody, this is Workforce Gaming. I'm Doug, along with Brad.
Hello.
And this week we got a code for Lawbreakers. So Brad got a chance to check that out. I think Brad, you've put like 15-ish hours, 20 hours, I think, into the game.
Yeah, right around there, give or take a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's always weird, kind of like reviewing a multiplayer game because these are one of those things that could definitely change a year from now, maybe half a year from
Yeah,
now as balance changes and stuff come out.
and it's one of those
Um,
things where there's always somebody who's played a lot more. Like looking at Uncharted, like I've played just as much of Uncharted as everybody else. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, there's definitely people who put 2 to 4 times as much time as I have into this game. But
Yeah, and I think that's just like an inherent thing with multiplayer games. So I guess we talked a little bit about the Lawbreakers beta. Like we had a whole video about that. So I actually never played more than the beta, but now that you got your hands on the full version, got to try out more maps and stuff. Like, how are you feeling about it?
this is a very cool game, but it's a very small game.
Okay.
I really did enjoy it. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out character classes and stuff, which I think again it's a good thing to preface this with yeah, that didn't sound right. I think this is a good thing to preface with the fact that neither one of us is super into the hero shooter thing,
Yeah.
and even multiplayer gaming in general. Like I don't, especially first person games. Like I don't get into too many of them just because I feel like they've moved so far away from what I enjoyed back in the day, which was Unreal Tournament, Quake, the first couple Halo games, that kind of fast pace
Hmm.
arena shooter, which this does kind of call back to a lot, which is
I was
really
gonna say that
cool.
is exactly this.
Which it is one of those things where it's like if somebody were to take those games from 10, 15 years ago that I loved and updated them, it would be Lawbreakers, which is really cool. Just the way, the speed, the just constant movement, the constant running around. I feel like every time I try and play something like Battlefield or Call of Duty, I feel like it's like, oh
Mhm.
no, you're going too fast, and that drives
Yeah.
me crazy because I want to go fast. Like let's go. Like there's the thing I need to get. Let's go. Um, but I think this game is it's fun. There's the one thing I would say with this is it does not have a lot to do. There's
Hmm.
only maybe crap 4, 5 game types is all, and like 6 maps, and that's
Hmm.
it.
Oh,
Which
okay. So even for like a multiplayer shooter, you're saying like even
yeah,
like the fact that it's multiplayer only, it doesn't have a lot of stuff to do even do for in
for
the
that, yeah,
concept of being just a multiplayer shooter.
yeah, it's very quick. Within a couple hours, you can pretty much see every map and play every game type multiple times. So that's a little weird, just because again, when you've got a multiplayer only game, you think bigger than that now.
Hmm.
Bosky has said there's new maps, new stuff coming, and it's all free, which is cool. So it's one of those games that I think as the time goes on, it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, which will be cool. But for what's there, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
definitely a game you can sit down with and play a couple hours. I will also say this is a game that the first 5 hours I just got my shit kicked in every single time, every single game. This
High
is
schoolers, man.
this is one of those things where like you got to invest some time in because
Yeah.
the first probably 4 or 5 hours I played this was like, oh, I killed 4 people and died 23 times. That was fun.
I think it's weird too because I think that you probably would have had an easier because you play this on PS4 and I think
Yeah.
playing a Twitch Quake sort of game on a controller is a weird thing in and of itself. So I was actually kind of curious about that, like because I think for a long time, especially like GoldenEye, kind of like started that trend of well these controllers aren't as accurate as like mouse and keyboard, so we need to kind of slow things down. Halo is actually I think it's not super speedy. I think it's like pretty. I mean it's compared to like Quake Arena at the
Oh
time or
yeah,
Unreal
no, yeah.
Tournament. It was slower. So this is kind of like applying that Unreal Tournament super fast combat using a controller. So do you ever feel like you're like in over your head because you're like shit I just can't do this with a controller. I could maybe do this with mouse. I could probably be better with a mouse and keyboard.
Me
But
personally, no, just because I've been so far removed from a mouse and keyboard that probably would mess me up in and of itself for 3 hours. But
oh, okay, yeah,
I feel like it is kind of an issue just because you do want to move fast. And
yeah,
what actually surprised me is I normally in like games like this, I'm like, no, I'm gonna play like whenever I think about these types of things, I always choose the heavy character, the big dude with the machine gun, the big whether it's a story game or a multiplayer game. I always go the big guys. Like, oh, this
yeah.
guy, he's just like barely can walk at 2 miles an hour and has just a big ass rocket launcher on him. I kind of figured out after the first couple hours, I much prefer the quick characters in this, which was a huge weird thing to me, just
Yeah.
because that's not my style of play. But even using some of them, it's very much like, oh, nope, I didn't quite, that didn't go over quite as quick as I wanted to, or oh, I went a little bit too far. So there is a little bit of that in this.
Mm.
especially when you're playing Gunslinger, which is one that I used a lot, where it's a one shot charge up attack.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because you have to be accurate. And if when you get to the point that you are accurate, it's great. But the
Mm.
first little bit just takes a while to get used to, and it takes a while to find out what character suits you. I think because again,
Yeah.
my first instinct was to go to the big dude who flies around with a big old chain gun,
Yeah.
and I kept getting crushed in that, so I switched over to somebody different. So it does take a little bit to get there, and I think that's the one thing I'd caution people with is just if you played the beta for an hour or two and you're like, this is hard. It is a
Yeah.
hard game to get down, and especially when you get into the zero gravity stuff, which is really really cool and a ton of fun to kind of mess around with. It takes a while to understand the controls, and it takes a while to
Yeah.
really get situated into this game to the point where you even feel like you're decent. Most of the time, I felt like everybody's just pissed at me because I suck because I can't figure it out. And
Yeah.
once you get there, though, it feels very rewarding, and it feels like I feel like a lot of times in multiplayer games, and again, this might just be me and my not huge appreciation for them. I
Mm.
feel like there's that you suck, you're okay, and you're amazing. And this one kind
Yeah.
of felt like you went from I suck to I'm really good, and there wasn't that middle ground. It's like once you get it, you get it,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
is kind of cool. And again, I think that goes back to those Unreal tournaments, those Quake arenas where you did suck, but once you kind of once you get the pace down and everything, you kind of knew what you were doing well enough to be able to hold your own against pretty much anybody. I feel like so. I don't know. It's a very fun game. I
Yeah.
can safely say even when I was getting just beat up every single time, I still had fun with it just because it is so fast paced. There's never that like, oh man, well maybe if I just sit here by the base and just hang out for a second, like then I'll do better. And it's no, like you can do that, but it still just moves as quick because everybody's moving so fast through these arenas. And the
Yeah.
arenas themselves are pretty tight for the most part. So you're
Mm.
never that far away from anybody. And that's always my issue with Battlefield. It's like, oh, all right, I got my mile walk till I can see another guy I got to shoot.
And
But
then
this
dead
it's
instantly.
and then oh, wait, I saw him, but there was a sniper to my right, and now let's start that hike again.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
this is much more like, okay, I know why I died. Back to the beginning. Okay, all right, and we're there again. It's just that quick, constant thing, which I like, and I think that's part of what makes me enjoy this game because I think of games like Trials where it's like, well, I fucked up. All right, start over.
That's
Oh,
actually really interesting. That's actually a really interesting way to put it, because I think those games do take a lot of precision and stuff, and they realize like since this game requires such precision and has such a high skill level, it's like well we'll just bring you back in as quick as possible sort of thing.
yeah, and I feel like that's what this game does. But
Yeah.
again, it's there's not a lot else to talk about with this. I think this is a pretty quick game that you can kind of get a feel for after a few hours. Again, you probably won't get to the level where you feel like you're good at it after a couple hours, but you can see everything.
Yeah.
There are the loot box things where you can change your whatever. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I opened one and went, oh, that's all that is. Okay, and I think I've got like 20 unopened things just sitting there because it's like I don't. Great, you can make my character have red clothes instead of blue clothes. So that is
Yeah.
there if you're one of those people that wants to get into your customize and crap. But a lot of that did feel very minuscule. Like even playing it, you really can't pick it out for the most part. It's kind of that carrot that keeps you going, but it really is. I feel like a little bit less worth it than even most of these games are, where there is that
Yeah.
that thing hanging there. But
Yeah, I remember like because when in the beta is because the characters I felt like were so like like how there's like crazy mechanical details on them that like when you got a new thing, it seems so minute because you couldn't tell because it just looked like another crazy mechanical detail or just a
yeah,
slightly different color sort of thing.
yeah,
Um,
and we talked about this in the beta. Character wise, there's not much there, and I do think that's kind of a downside of this game is there isn't a lot of personality to it. A lot of it is that mechanical. A lot of it is that
yeah,
yep, it's a big old metal room with some stuff in it, and you are just a guy, and your guy has
yeah.
different guns than that guy over there, which I think in a time when you're competing against things like Overwatch, it does give you a little bit of a different perspective on that. So,
So yeah, I
uh,
mean, I guess, how do you feel about this game in relation to like you brought up Halo, you've played Quake, you've played Unreal Tournament back in the day. Like, do you feel like it can stand among those, or do you think it's like we gotta let this one, we just gotta wait, give this one another few? Like those games had 10 years to get to the point where they are, but I mean, do you feel like this game could get to that echelon?
yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of good here. I think the bad things are more the aesthetics, so to speak.
Hmm.
The core gameplay is phenomenal. Where the
Yeah,
issues start to come are the fact of, well, there's only 5 or 6 maps. Well, there's 3 or
hmm,
4 game types, and most of those are some variation of capture the flag. Um, And then again, the characters and just the aesthetics of these arenas, and just they all kind of mush together in your brain because there's not a whole lot of really cool defining features. So I
Yeah.
do think this is a game that you could do some very easy tweaks to,
Yeah.
and whether it's Lawbreakers 2 or whether it's just in the course of updates over the next year or two, this could become one of those really cool games just because you can fix aesthetics, you can fix all those other things. You can fix those. It's not sitting here going like, oh, well, the anti-gravity part's not very fun, because it is. And
Yeah.
it's not like you're going, oh, well, the shooting feels a little off. It feels great. So there's a lot to work with here. I think it's just, it needs to be bigger. It doesn't feel like, doesn't feel like it's on the same level as Overwatch. It doesn't feel like it's on the same level as Halo. It feels like it's like the little brother trying to get there. And I think once you add that stuff in and you get there, it could be a very, very meaningful shooter. And I think it could be a shooter that does hold a place up there with those if they do follow through with this and if they kind of push this in the right direction, which again, I know they've got stuff coming. So adding in those new maps, adding in a new game type or two is going to make a world of difference for this game. But again, you also have to look at it as they were very upfront with saying this is a $30 game.
Yeah.
And I think as much as I don't necessarily like to say that, you're comparing it to $60 games. So would it make sense that there's half the content? To me, yes. So
yeah.
I think if you understand kind of that going in and knowing, okay, there is a plan, we are going to push this forward, we are going to add some new stuff in. I think in the long run, this could be a game where listening to this review a year from now, going, okay, all those complaints are worthless. You're right, it's a damn good core game because we did add more maps. We did add this. We gave the characters some personality. You can do all those things with patches and all that stuff coming out.
Yeah. Cool. Actually, I was a little kind of tapping on this, but actually you talking about it, I was like, oh, shoot, I did have some good fun with the beta.
Like, and that's really the thing is I feel like with multiplayer, to me at least, I don't need like the story and the characters with background and all this other stuff. Just make the core gameplay fun, and that's what this does. Is to me, it was put the game on mute, throw Spotify up there, and just sit down and have fun for like an hour.
Yeah.
Move on to something else. Come back the next day, do the same thing, play for an hour and a half, do something else. And I think that's where this game it just serves a great purpose, and I don't know, I enjoyed it. It's a good thing.
Cool. All right. We are Workforce Gaming. If you guys like what you heard, you can always follow us on Twitter at Workforce Gaming. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week.